Production of Broad and High is funded in part by the Greater Columbus Arts Council, supporting arts, advancing culture, and connecting the community to artists, events, and classes at columbusmakesart.com.
This time on Broad and High, a new public mural can be seen lining the walls of the Short North.
We have 652 bricks in the panels, and then we have 26 pressed birds.
Explore visions from India at the Pizzuti collection. And a Columbus photographer wants to introduce you to some new neighbors. This and more right now on Broad and High. Hi everyone, I'm Kate Quickle and welcome to Broad and High. There's a new public art piece in the Short North. It's called the Messenger Wall, and it's located on the northern edge of the Arts District at 5th and High. It was conceived by the husband and wife team of Eric Rausch and Jen Kiko, and we had the chance to follow them as they brought this large-scale sculptural mural to life.
This is an interesting project because it started last year and now it's coming full circle. So we're on the corner of High Street and 5th Avenue on the east side, in the heart of the Short North, or the northern part of the Short North.
We're mocking up our public art piece that will be installed this spring. These white papers will eventually be carved brick, but right now we're just making sure that all of the elements line up and they look good in real life on the wall.
The idea behind the Messenger Wall is to honor people who have been key messengers in our community. And then we also wanted to pay homage to a former director of our organization who worked tirelessly to do so much good here, and the name for the wall actually comes from him. His name was John Angelo.
It also so happens that his last name means angel or messenger in Italian. So his name is tied into it, but then the notion of a community messenger is really what they're trying to get across, which is someone who actively brings people into the circle to work together to make whichever community they're part of better and stronger because we're all together in it. So I started thinking of how to convey messages, message in a bottle, messenger pigeon. So what Jen came up with was sort of an abstract design that it might look like the way the wind blows or the way a bird might fly through the air if they flap their wings. And then this composition carries throughout 4 panels, and these panels are being installed into old windowsills. This project couldn't have been done without the help of my awesome studio assistant, Brooke Slobodian. So we took Jen's drawing and we put it onto paper, and then we put that paper onto these wet bricks that we had stacked in the wall pattern, and then traced through the paper to get the markings on there, and then carved the relief pattern out of there. And now I'm using the back end of a Sharpie marker to trace through the paper and trying to make sure I get enough pressure that I am indenting the wet clay bricks underneath. And then we'll peel off the paper for the, we'll call it medium reveal. Let's just go at it. These bricks are, they're about 8 pounds each, which is pretty crazy. So that the big panel has 350 bricks or so. I was actually worried when we stacked them as tall as we did that the ones on the bottom, because they're wet, I wasn't sure if they were going to start smushing, but it didn't. It didn't happen. We have 652 bricks in the panels, and then we have 26 pressed birds. If the clay is a little bit wetter on the side that's touching the plaster, we'll get a smoother surface like that, and where it's a little bit drier, it's a little more crumbly. But dare I say, this is exactly what we were going for. All right, so we'll unload the kiln now. We fired the bricks, and you saw the brick clay is that green color. It's like a forest green color when it goes in the kiln. And because of the iron in the shale, it turns from green to the red color. So every brick is marked on the back so that we can install them in order. I can't wait to see these up on the wall.
In taking a look at the neighborhood and seeing where we could help redefine some spaces with art and creativity, one of the places that emerged to us was Fifth Avenue, because in many ways it's this gateway into the neighborhood.
It's not, you know, the shiny boutique part. It's the real part where real people walk around, and I think that's really cool to be part of their everyday.
Public art is needed, especially in a place like Fifth and High. So it's nice to be part of the beautification, but it's also important to remember where community comes from and who the people are living in that community.
It really is part of our mission to help redefine these spaces in big creative ways with art that is lasting.
As a high school art teacher, you're so much doing day-to-day solving problems on smaller scale. I'd never thought like I would do something so big, and for sure not something so permanent.
It's really kind of hard to wrap my mind around graduating from Ohio State and putting a significant piece of permanent artwork on the corner of Fifth and High, which is the beginning of the arts district in the capital city that I love.
Be sure to check out the Messenger Wall located at the corner of High and 5th in the Short North Arts District. And follow Eric Rausch on Instagram to keep up with his latest clay projects. Our next segment takes us a few blocks south of the Messenger Wall with a visit to the Pizzuti Collection, also located in the Short North. Their current exhibit explores a broad array of contemporary artwork coming out of India. Here's a sneak peek.
There's a lot of stuff that moves in this exhibition, and I think that's a lot of fun. There's a lot of kinetic art. There's a lot of things that make you feel a certain way standing next to them, whether it's anxiety or car sickness or maybe your sense of where you are in space. So that's a really fun pathway through this exhibition, but there are many others. There are lots of found objects, artists who are taking things that have been discarded and using them and giving them a second life and creating out of the ready-made something new. I've never seen people so nervous in front of that, and in fact it's one of my favorite things to watch people from behind as they get that sense of worry that they're going to have to save the pot and save it as it falls. But the thing is that Sudarshan has taken this classic water jug made out of terracotta and perfectly balanced it on the wheels so that it is calibrated to turn over to the point where you believe it might fall, adjust itself, and go back. So it's never going to fall down, but part of the play of his piece is drawing out that anxiety and that wonder in you. So we have a show called Visions from India, which is actually an incredible celebration and a combination of two exhibitions. One is called Transforming Vision, and it's 21st century art from the Pizzuti collection. So it's a lot of work, 44 works by 26 artists, all who have a connection to India. Either they're from India or they found their way to India. And then we have a show called The Progressive Master, which is works by Francis Newton Sousa, who's a 20th century painter, and they come from another private collection here in Columbus, the Rajadaksha collection.
I want him to feel the emotion that comes from his work. That is what attracted me to him, that every one of his paintings gives you the turmoil. This guy was Catholic, in a Catholic family. He never believed much of the doctrine, but he was impressed by the rituals of the Catholic Church.
So he, in India, at the time of independence, was part of one of the most important art movements of mid-20th century India called the Progressives. And they were trying to find ways to create a new Indian modernism and a new vocabulary. So he was a very important figure in India. And then he became also an important figure in Britain. And so as we were thinking about putting the show together, we realized that we had an incredible opportunity to show both works from the 20th century and from the 21st century and show two different moments of Indian cultural production. There's this incredible theme throughout all of Ron's collecting where he loves craftsmanship. So this work is very specifically hand-carved, 13-foot tall archway. It's a magnificent piece that has the swinging sword. So as much as it is about the tree of life and these gorgeous flowers and palm trees, it invites you in. It's an archway, it's a portal to somewhere. If you were to try to walk through it, you would encounter the sword. The artist, whose name is Subodh Gupta, has taken tiffin carriers, so these stacks and stacks and stacks of traditional lunch boxes, and put them on the sushi table in this array that looks both like a landscape and this chaotic sort of gathering of these boxes, both old and new. So each of the dogs is a cast of a dog's skeleton, and it's sitting in a plexiglass box that has a surveillance camera. A binary, so something that is dead that's seeing, something that is static that moves. He is really playing with our idea of what is it that we are facing, this array of dogs who are watching us. So many of these artists are dealing with themes that are universal. Issues of gender, issues of the environment, issues of spirituality, issues of traffic. Each work in this exhibition can be looked at aesthetically, but also can be the springboard for investigation into, learning something new about India.
Visions from India is on view at the Pizzuti Collection through October 28th. Visit pizzuticollection.org to learn more. Wedged in between India and China are the two landlocked countries of Bhutan and Nepal. In the 1990s, thousands of Bhutanese people were evicted from their country and resettled in refugee camps in Nepal. After spending 20 years in those camps, many of those refugees have relocated to the U.S., with a large number coming here to Central Ohio. Through a series of compelling portraits, Columbus photographer Tariq Terry is sharing the stories of their journeys as a way to introduce us to our Bhutanese Nepali neighbors.
Most people, when they photograph refugees, they photograph the most dire situations where people are in their lowest point. I wanted to make sure that we look at our neighbors equally and not a refugee tourism. In every chaos, you have to at some point control it. I thought it was more appropriate for people to come and focus on the identity and the people rather than the space they're in. I myself was a refugee. I came to this country as a refugee status. Bhutanese and Nepalis are the latest wave of refugees that are coming to Columbus and the United States. I photographed and documented the Somali refugees while they were coming. It was important to me to archive their stories as well. They are Ohioans, as much as you are, as much as your audience. If we don't save their history today, it's going to be gone. So what we decided to do was we decided to do the journey of the Bhutanese and Nepalis in 3 segments. Bhutan itself, where they originated from, and the journey from Bhutan to the refugee camp. They lived there for 20 some odd years, and then Ohio. In the late 80s, the king at the time wanted one country, one nation. So there was a systematic aggression towards the Nepali indigenous people. So they were in refugee camps for 20 some odd years. From 1992, for the most people that I interviewed, all the way to 2008. So you're looking at a very, very long time to be in a refugee camp. So they were born in Bhutan, and ethnically they're Nepali. But the historical significance is extremely important, one to understand. You know, born in Bhutan, ancestral land, Nepali, lived in Nepal as a refugee for 20 years. So it's complex. The United States resettled over 70,000 refugees from Nepal. As Central Ohio, we have the largest Bhutanese and Nepali refugees. Each portrait, there'll be accompanied by a bio that talks about the person's journey from refugee camps to how they got to Ohio, what they're doing in Ohio. So it gives you a glimpse of understanding of what the people, your neighbors, are going through. Refugees are an asset and not a liability, and that's important for us to know. Taro Dungana, he is a program manager at a very successful community organization. He has employees working, so he created jobs in Ohio. That, to me, is what a true refugee represents. The human being, by and large, fears the unknown. Get rid of that fear. These are human beings just like you and I, and they care about their community. There are people, so get to know them.
The stories and photographs of our Bhutanese Nepali neighbors will be on view at the Ohio History Center through January 7th, 2018. Learn more at ohiohistory.org. Our final story tonight introduces us to Dr. Robert Falcone. After a successful career as a trauma surgeon and a CEO, he decided to take on another challenge, to get his MFA from the Columbus College of Art and Design. He shares his creative journey and his belief that art, medicine, and business are all interconnected.
Dr. Robert Falcone has had a successful career in medicine and business. He's been a surgeon, has headed up a major hospital, and is currently the CEO of the Ohio Hospital Association. Even with all of this professional success, he recently decided to go back to school for his MFA. This was not something completely out of the blue. Robert has been actively working as an artist and a musician his entire life.
I was never going to be a good enough musician or artist to make a living, an adequate living. And medicine gave me the opportunity to do both those things. I wasn't a working artist, so I didn't have anything to lose if people didn't like what I did. I wasn't planning on making a living as an artist. I just wanted to be a better artist.
Though art and medicine may not seem related, to Robert they are all interconnected.
Art is very open and very subject to interpretation. Medicine is not rigid, but pretty codified. The beauty about art is it helps make us more human, which I think makes me a better physician. I would think that at least 60% of everything I've ever done in medicine was communicating, interacting, providing advice, providing guidance, providing support, without ever really doing anything else. And then maybe 40% of it was the technical side of medicine. And that part that was the human part is really informed by the arts. It makes me a better doctor, a better leader, or a better citizen.
Part of Robert's work was shaped by two tragedies. When he was driving home one night as an undergrad, he was hit by a drunk driver.
When I was involved in that motor vehicle collision, and my girlfriend that was with me died, and I came pretty close to dying, I decided right then and there I'd never waste another minute.
Later on in his life, his wife, Ann Miller, who was also a surgeon and an artist, was killed in a car accident. These losses drew Robert to themes of suddenness and change.
I had some pretty interesting images I shot in Montana when I was driving there. And they were images of these wonderful landscapes with big blue skies and these little white road crosses. Apparently in Montana, the American Legion puts a road cross everywhere somebody dies. And actually on many occasions I'd stand there and I'd be pretty emotional because this is where somebody died.
He used these ideas for his thesis show.
Well, when I started my MFA, I was pretty comfortable painting, so I made the very discreet decision that I would change my practice. And I would go to something I knew very little about, and that's sound. How to use sound to create environments, to tell a story. I got a friend, Richard Smoot, who's just an amazing musician and composer. I got him to craft me a contemporary chant, and then somehow managed to talk members of the Columbus Gay Men's Choir to learn and perform that piece. And as the crowd started to gather, the choir just started almost like a flash mob stepping up onto the risers. The choir master clicked them in, and they performed this piece. And then they left the stage. And the audience eventually left, and all that was left of this piece was a memory of that performance. Scuffs and scrapes on the drywall where they stood, the empty space, and a recording that I made of their performance that would loop intermittently. So if somebody came in that space, they'd have to really wonder, well, what happened here? And that's really what I wanted to accomplish. Okay, so 1 minute you're alive and the next minute you're dead. So what does that mean?
Since his wife's death in 1998, all of the sales of Robert's work has gone into Annie's Fund. Robert's work is usually handled by the Duff Lindsay Gallery in Columbus, Ohio.
I established a fund in her name to fund artists that don't necessarily get funds, and to fund organizations that don't necessarily get funds. We've raised, many hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 18 years, and have given away probably between $10,000 and $15,000 a year every year since 1999.
His most recent show featured paintings of parrots.
I don't like birds, but they're beautiful. And I wanted to paint a series of really beautiful birds and to make them look like 19th century prints, except they were oil on panel.
Robert has also had shows featuring album covers, James Bond villains, botanical scenes, and many other themes.
I usually start by just thinking, and it may be a couple months of thinking and rethinking and looking and re-looking, and then I'll do a fair amount of research when I pick a topic that I like. And once I pick that topic, and I do a fair amount of the thought process ahead of time, painting it is really pretty easy. On a daily basis, I may spend 30 minutes just staring into space. I think it's really important. For me, it's how I recharge my thinking, my creativity. Some people meditate, some people exercise. I just stare. It's cheap, it's easy, it doesn't usually hurt your joints or anything else, and it's just for me very regenerative.
Robert is also a working musician and donates his profits from his band to Annie's Fund. For Robert, there is no separation between art and business.
The arts and the creativity that they allow makes a huge difference in our day-to-day interactions. It's hard, at least for me, to communicate and to show empathy and to care if I don't have some human wrappings around my scientific core. And so I think it really helps. And a number of the bigger organizations are bringing artists and designers into their C-suite for that specific purpose. I think that's a little artificial. I think it's better that the leaders have those skills in addition to the people they hire. I'm the luckiest person alive. I've had several really exciting lives, and I've lived them as best I can, and I've been really happy to say that most of them have been successful, and many of them have done good. So, I mean, it's perfect.
Be sure to check out all of our stories at WOSU.org, as well as on the WOSU Public Media mobile app. And of course, give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're closing out our 4th season with music by Sean Marshall and the Near Miss. This Columbus-based band released its first full-length album, New, just this spring. From all of us here at Broad and High, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back with more new and amazing stories of Columbus creativity in the fall. Till then, have a great summer and keep watching.
Talking to the walls, 'cause they don't know how to show, and the pictures can't see the other side. Everyone who comes around wants to know just how they died.
Production of Broad and High is funded in part by the Greater Columbus Arts Council, supporting arts, advancing culture, and connecting the community to artists, events, and classes at columbusmakesart.com.